The All-Star break is over. Mets baseball is finally back. I'll get you ready for the second half of the season on today's show.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. You can also find some of my writing at JustBaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. This episode of Locked On Mets is brought to you by Booking.com, Booking.The. The Red State can make you a fan of any city, even your rivals. Check out Booking.com for your stay today. Isn't it great to have Mets baseball back? Because I'll tell you what, I was getting antsy over the last couple of days. You don't realize how much you miss it until it goes away. Because throughout the season, you might have a day off on a Monday or a Thursday, but that might come once every couple of weeks. You get so much into the routine of there always being a game each day. There's always something to think about, to talk about, to watch. And then the All-Star break comes and we're just sitting on our hands for 4 days. And I think you feel it a lot more when the team is going well, because I don't remember the break being this long and slow, monotonous last year, because maybe I wasn't as excited for Mets baseball to come on back in 2023. But this is a team that I'm all the way bought in. I know a lot of Mets fans are. It's been so much fun to watch, but they are in a very, very interesting stretch of their season. Over the last couple of days, we've been talking a lot about the Mets buying at the trade deadline. On Wednesday, I had a whole show on all the outfielders that are on the market the Mets could be interested in to try to replace Starling Marte and bolster their lineup. Yesterday, I went through 5 different teams that the Mets could be on the phone with to get some relief help at the deadline, and I really touched on, I don't even know, probably 20-plus relievers that could be of interest for the New York Mets. But to be buyers, you got to prove it all the way through, and the Mets have done an amazing job to put themselves in position to buy. You take a step back now with the All-Star break and you think, man, a 40-game stretch where they went 27-13. They won 8 series. They split 4. They only lost 1. They also swept 4 series. So those 4 that they split, you pair it with those sweeps, and it's almost like you had won 12 series and only lost 1, just when it comes to what your record looked like through that stretch. In the next segment, I'm going to talk about reasons to believe in this team. And the offense is an absolute reason. They have been the best offense in baseball throughout this 40-game period. And now you look at what is ahead, you are right there on the precipice of buying. You're right there. And there's been a lot of stories that went up today, or a couple at least. One from the New York Post, one from Newsday, just talking about that idea of buying. From the New York Post, it was mentioning how Steve Cohen would love to invest in this team. How he would love to see this team make a run, and the Mets are in position. They don't want to let that just pass them by, which is good to hear. In Newsday, Tim Healy talked to a lot of the players, and he had a lot of quotes from JD Martinez, who discussed different deadlines throughout his career. He mentioned how in 2021, they felt like, as a team, the Boston Red Sox, they were good enough to win. They were in first place at the deadline. They didn't do enough to bolster that roster. They did make the playoffs. They even made the LCS, but they fell short, and they felt like other teams got better around them. You heard that with Seattle, I think it was last year, where the Mariners end up getting eliminated near the end there, and the Rangers and the Astros shoot ahead. And there was some vocal players talking about the fact that other teams got better at the deadline. They did not. The Rangers got Max Scherzer. They got Jordan Montgomery. The Astros got Justin Verlander. And those teams ended up, edging out the Mariners. So this is real. The clubhouse is expecting a buyer at the deadline. That's what they want. They even talked about 2018, JD Martinez did, how the Red Sox were in a position where all they really thought they needed was bullpen help, and they got it. But they also got Steve Pearce at the deadline, and Steve Pearce was great for them down the stretch and ended up being the World Series MVP. So you never really know what piece you might need. And whoever it is, it could be some surprise out of left field that David Stearns gets some stud right fielder that I'm not even thinking about, that I didn't even talk about on my show. It's like, wow, the Mets got him. And then all of a sudden that guy catches like fire and is a pivotal force down the stretch. You never really know. But to get to that point, there's still 10 games. 11 technically until you actually get to the deadline. But I look at the road ahead. And once you get to deadline week, Okay, once you get to, which I think the deadline's on what, a Tuesday? Yeah, it's a Tuesday. So once you get to that Monday, the decision will have been made. And honestly, it'll probably have been made before that. I would be shocked if this team sold at this point. I think they're going to play out the string. They would have to have a drastic fall over the next 3 series here to have gone to the point where the Mets are like, all right, we're going to trade Pete Alonso. I just don't foresee that happening. Now, how aggressive are they going to be to buy, though? How much do they believe? What prospects are they willing to put on the table for this season? A season that is honestly sort of just gravy for the Mets. It's not one that they went into the year necessarily expecting it to be the season they win the World Series. They went into this year thinking, all right, we can compete, we can put ourselves in position. And then at the deadline, maybe you make some moves. They've done that almost, but there's still 10 games here. There's 3 more series before you get to that trade deadline. You got 4 in Miami, which are so crucial. That's a team that you should beat. Then you go to the Bronx. You play the Yankees for 2 games. And the Yankees are not playing their best baseball, that's for sure. But going into the break, they play the Orioles in a very tough series. That is the 2 teams that are battling out atop the AL East. And they were a 9th inning meltdown away from sweeping the Baltimore Orioles. And I think with the Mets, they went into this break like, man, I'm sure they appreciate what they've done, but I'm positive that a lot of those players, like, I would like to just get right back on the field and keep playing games. The Yankees, it's been the opposite. This has been a nice respite for them, a godsend to just get a couple days to sit back and to say, all right, we're in a good spot. Let's flush the last couple of weeks and get ready for our stretch run. So I think the Yankees are going to be a tough team for those couple of games. And then you got the Braves for 4. And I'll tell you what, the Braves and the Phillies are still on this schedule a lot for the Mets. And every time that they face one of those 2 teams, they are going to see red. They're going to want to do everything they can to knock the Mets out of the playoffs because that's what this rivalry is all about in the National League East, those 3 teams in particular. And players take it seriously. So right now you're looking at this period, 10 games, go out and be a winning team. That's what I'd say. Win 6. And the Mets can do their work early if they handle business in Miami. If they just win this series, take 3 games, then you split the Yankees series, split the Braves series. Guess what? That is a 6-4 stretch. And you'll be right there sitting, 4 games over 500, ready for Steve Cohen to invest some more money in this team, David Stearns to make the right trades. I think they'd be willing and ready to do that. What you don't want is to leave a sour taste in their mouth right before the decisions are made. Because then when you're in that position where you got to give up a prospect and it might be some 18-year-old that you really like, but it gets the deal done to get you the missing piece for a team that can make a push this year, if your last memory is some bad baseball, you might just hold on to that kid and stand pat and do nothing, or even trade a Luis Severino or Sean Manaea or a Jose Quintana. And I've thrown some cold water on the idea that they would actually do that they would trade a starting pitcher to bolster their bullpen. I've seen that tossed around to get some prospects. I honestly think that those guys have become too integral to this team, just as much as you talk about the message you send to your clubhouse by buying. You all of a sudden rip Luis Severino out of that clubhouse, who's well-liked, who has been a consistent force for you in that rotation. You pull him out. You pull out Jose Quintana, who's a veteran leader. You pull out Sean Manaea. That's not going to be received well. So I really do think the Mets have done enough to at least stand pat at this deadline and not be sellers. I don't see a world, even if the Mets lost every game, where Pete Alonso gets traded. But this is the last big test here. It's 10 games, 3 series, handle business, and then the reinforcements will come. And you got a rested team ready to do it with a good series to start it all off in Miami. So we're going to talk about next here is reasons to believe. I'm going to give you reasons why the New York Mets should be able to make a real run this season. We'll get to that in just a minute. First, though, a word from our sponsors. This episode of Locked On Mets is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah. With summer travel heating up, especially travel for baseball games, it's time to explore those U.S. cities you've always secretly wanted to learn more about. Yes, we're talking about your rival cities, and right now the Mets are in Miami. It's not too late. Head over to Booking.com, book a stay, and get down here for the series. If you're already here, that's great. I will be there at the game on Friday night. You can come by, say hi. But regardless, with hotels, bed and breakfasts, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more on Booking.com, you might just find your perfect stay even in your baseball rival city. It's just a stretch run here. You want to make sure you catch the Mets before it's too late this season, and the right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your rivals. So book today on Booking.com on the site or on the Booking.com app. Today's episode is also brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you have to do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. You watch the winnings roll in. Get in on the daily action with your friends and become part of the Prize Picks community today. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000. If you're looking for promotions, Prize Picks has got you covered every week, from lowering select player stat projections on Tuesdays to help your lineup hit, or getting your entry fees back if you have a losing lineup on Fridays. Today is Friday, people. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on Prize Picks for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy with Prize Picks. If you're an everyday listener to the show, make sure you become a Locked On Mets insider. This is our texting service where I can send you updates anytime so news breaks on the Mets. So today, I let the insiders know that the Mets had signed catcher Logan Porter to a major league deal, which is a little bit deceiving because Porter has 3 options. So he was signed then outrighted to Syracuse. But this does give the Mets another catcher for some depth on their roster, a position they're pretty thin at beyond Francisco Alvarez and Luis Torrens. And Porter has been swinging it well this year. So not a bad ad. If things break the way the Mets want them to, you probably never see him play, but it's always good to be proactive when you can get some depth. And if you want to be inside your access with Locked On Mets, make sure you become a Locked On Mets insider to receive those texts. Ask me questions anytime. You can also take part in our Locked On Mets signed photo giveaways. You get the lineup graphic sent to your phone each day. You can find a link to join in the episode description or go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. All right, so let's talk about the reasons to believe in the New York Mets. And the first one is pretty simple. Really good lineup. They have been the best lineup in baseball since May 30th, when this stretch of 40 games began. And that's in large part due to Francisco Lindor and Brandon Nimmo, but really it does go up and down the lineup. The Mets are leading Major League Baseball in wins above replacement from their position players since May 30th. That tells you how valuable a player is. They have the most valuable team of position players in all of baseball. They're leading the league in WRC plus at 138. WRC plus is weighted runs created plus. It measures hitters, or in this case, teams, based on a league average of 100. It's park adjusted. It takes all these different things into account, and the Mets have had the best mark in baseball. They're also leading Major League Baseball in runs scored, in slugging percentage, and in OPS, while ranking second in batting average, in on-base percentage, and in home runs. They've been unbelievable as a team, and you look at some of the production they have gotten up and down their lineup, and it's just been remarkable to see how they've consistently found it, not just from one guy, but from multiple guys. So you start at the top, and that's Francisco Lindor, who has been the best shortstop in baseball by WAR since this stretch. He's hitting .313, .397 on base, .569 slug, 9 home runs, 26 RBIs, 12 stolen bases, a 174 WRC plus. Brandon Nimmo, .289 average, .368 on base, .546 slug, 9 home runs, a team leading 34 RBIs, also team leading 32 runs scored, tied with Lindor. Think about that for a second. Across a 40-game span, those two guys scored 64 runs between them, and they drove in 60. Nimmo's got a 160 WRC plus 1.8 F4. Francisco Alvarez, in a 100 plate appearance sample size, hit .333 with a .410 on base, .552 slug. He drove in 15, hit 3 home runs, 173 WRC plus. Mark Vientos hit 9 home runs, hit .289, .342 on base, .528 slug, 146 WRC plus. Jose Iglesias hit .380 with a .999 OPS, 184 WRC plus. JD Martinez hit .257, .377 on base, .485 slug, 7 home runs, 27 runs driven in, 149 WRC plus. All those guys I just mentioned were each worth at least 1 win during this period. Meanwhile, Harrison Bader just below that, 0.8 F4. He's been hitting .270 with a .514 slug, 6 home runs, 20 RBIs, 21 runs scored. Then you have Luis Torrens in 19 games being worth 0.8 F4, hitting 283, 547 slug, 3 home runs, 9 RBIs. He's been unbelievable. Pete Alonso's not even playing his best, but he still has a 125 WRC plus. He is hitting 253, 333 on base, 455 slug, 7 home runs, 24 runs scored, 25 RBIs. Starling Marte at the beginning of the stretch was hitting 333. Tyrone Taylor's got a 481 slugging percentage. All those guys, 11 guys, have graded out at least a 120 WRC plus or better. There has only been 4 hitters that have been below average during this stretch. Tomas Nido, who played 4 games. Ben Gamel, who's played 9 games. DJ Stewart, who's only got 54 plate appearances, has hit 130, 259 on base, 196 slug, 44 WRC plus. And then Jeff McNeil, hitting 192 while the team is rolling. But with that said, I look at Jose Iglesias, I look at Jeff McNeil. Iglesias is not going to hit 380. Jeff McNeil is not going to hit 192. That platoon together, if it meets somewhere in the middle, I think they're going to be fine at second base. Third base, no doubts about Mark Vientos at this point. I think he's going to keep hitting. Shortstop, Lindor's been awesome. Catcher, I don't know if they're going to get this level of production, but will those guys be a problem offensively? I don't believe so. Nimmo's been great. JD Martinez, I think will actually be better than he's been at least over the last couple of weeks. Bader has been super solid. I think Pete Alonso still has another gear to hit. So yes, Nimmo and Lindor, they might come back down to earth. But if Pete Alonso takes it into gear, I just have faith in the Mets being able to put up runs. I really do. I don't think that's going to change this season. So reason to believe in this team, that's the big one. The other one for me is the fact that they're getting Kodai Senga back, and I do buy into this rotation. And we're going to talk about in the next segment how the Mets plan to line things up in this next stretch of games, because Senga is due to make one more rehab start, and then he should be inserted back into the rotation when the Mets are facing the Braves. So that is a huge emotional lift to get Diaz back, to get Senga back. But you look at what they've gotten across this period of 40 games, and you look straight to the left-handers in this rotation. Jose Quintana in 8 starts had a 2.89 ERA. Sean Manaea in 8 starts had a 3.80 ERA. And David Peterson in 7 starts had a 3.03 ERA. Funny thing is, Luis Severino has not pitched great during this stretch. 4.41 ERA. There was a bad start that really colored that, but still, there's, I think, room for even better performance from Sevy. Christian Scott, 4.79 ERA. There's room to grow there. And Tyler McGill had a 7.43 ERA. He's now out of the equation. So I look at those 5 guys with the inclusion of Senga coming into a 6-man rotation, and I am fully bought in that the Mets are going to be able to get enough starting pitching down the stretch that they don't have to make a trade at the deadline to do anything there. So more reasons to believe. I believe in the rotation. I believe in the lineup. There's 2 big reasons why I am still a little apprehensive about saying, oh yeah, the Mets are definitely going to make the playoffs. You can guess one of them pretty clearly. Otherwise, you've been living under a rock, because there's a glaring issue that we talk about on this show pretty much every single day, it feels like at this point, and we will continue to until something gets addressed. But there's another one, and I want to tell you what both of them are in just a minute. First, though, a word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Supply House. Get supplies from the site that's made for skilled trades, supplyhouse.com. Supplyhouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online with their easy-to-use website, which is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining Supply House's free Trade Master program, where every Trade Master gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros who are already benefiting from their free membership at supplyhouse.com/T-M and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at supplyhouse.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much, I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs have now winded down in the NBA and the NHL, we just get fewer games. But in the sports, they're not sportsing like I want them to, but FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want because all I have to do is open up the app, dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Stay up to date with everything in the world of sports by checking out Locked On Sports Today, streaming 24/7 on YouTube. Now, I said there's two reasons why I still am not completely bought in on the New York Mets, and the first one's obvious, the bullpen. Do I need to waste a breath on it? It's an issue, and it has to be addressed, and I think it will be addressed. Here's the second one that just makes me nervous. You look at the road ahead, and we talked about what's immediately in front of the Mets. August, not that bad for the Mets. They got some easier teams on the schedule. I think they play the Athletics. They play the White Sox. They got some potential to win some games against some lesser teams. Here's what makes me nervous about the second half for the Mets. The very end of the season. Their final 16 games, and I've talked about this before, but it's worth repeating. They're going to play the Phillies, the Braves, and the Brewers across that 16-game stretch. There is 3 games against the Nationals in there, which are great. Starting on September 13th, though, there is a 10-game stretch where 7 of 10 are going to be played versus Philly. And then the other 3 against the Nationals. Then you close the season with 3 against the Braves, 3 against the Brewers, I believe all on the road. That is a gauntlet to get there. Now, the Mets can do their work early, and they can win a lot of games, but are they going to win enough games where those 16 aren't going to matter? Absolutely not. They're going to have to at least put themselves in position to play 500 ball during that stretch, and to have to go up against the Phillies, a team that looks like the best in baseball right now, that could get even better because Dave Dombrowski, when he sees a window, he goes for it. He goes for it, and he's going to make moves at this deadline. We don't know exactly what the moves are going to be, but it's clear they probably need an outfielder. They can always get better with their pitching. Their pitching's unbelievable. They might even add an arm in the bullpen. They're going to make some adjustments to be even better. That is the only other thing that scares me. That's far away. You don't have to worry about it yet. We can enjoy everything up to that point. Hopefully we will enjoy that stretch of the season. If the Mets are a good team, they'll be just fine. But that's the one thing that concerns me. Again, today on Who's Better, in my other show for Just Baseball, when we were going through these teams, there was this part of me that as I was making the case for the Mets, but then you also at the same time as me and Patrick, my co-host, are going back and forth, we making our case for, okay, why could the Cubs make a run? Could the Giants make a run? And for a lot of those teams, those two in particular, I think we came to the decision they couldn't. But you can see a roadmap where either of those teams or any of the other, in the mix of all these wildcard teams can get hot at the right time and they can roll through it. And some of them have an easier schedule than the Mets, particularly at the end. So that is the other thing that has me a little bit worried. But again, it's far in the future. Let's wait on that. And let's look at the immediate games coming up here. The Mets have set their pitching. So here's what it's going to be. Sean Manaea is going to open things up Friday night. Jose Quintana on Saturday. Luis Severino on Sunday. Christian Scott on Monday. That's what they've committed to up to this point. The pitchers for this series against the Marlins. And there's some very interesting elements to what they've done here. So by starting Sean Manaea to open things up and leaving David Peterson out of this first series, the Mets have set themselves up to have the same 2 guys who started the last Subway Series against the Yankees to pitch again in Peterson and Manaea. And they both fared well. For Manaea, it was 5 scoreless. For Peterson, it was 4 1/3 where he allowed 1. They both did a good job, and the bullpen was able to hold up, and the Mets scored a ton of runs. So that was a good couple of games, and they're trying to catch that same lightning in the bottle again with those guys. But even more interestingly, they had Christian Scott slated for Monday. Why is that important? Well, Kodai Senga is going to make a rehab start at some point this weekend. I would imagine it's probably on Saturday. That would be pitching on 5 days rest. He pitched on Sunday. So Senga makes that rehab start, gets up maybe to 80 pitches, something close to that, all as well. He could enter the rotation against the Braves as early as Friday on 5 days rest. What does that mean for Christian Scott? For the rest of this season, he's never going to have to start on 4 days rest again. That is the positive side of it. And so what you're going to see is this group of four go: Minaya, Quintana, Severino, Scott, then Peterson and Minaya, then probably Quintana, and then Kodai Senga on Friday night against the Braves. Then you go back to Severino and Christian Scott, or you could start Severino and then go to Senga to Scott. It does set up an interesting rotation because you'll now have 3 lefties going for one series in the future when this 6-minute rotation rolls, and then 3 righties. They're all bunched together. Now, there is an off day on the Thursday after the trade deadline where the Mets could mix things up a little bit, try to take one of those lefties, squeeze him in between the righties, and make it a little more balanced. But that 6-minute rotation is coming soon, and that's how they're going to start things off. Now, they're playing the Marlins, as we've talked about. The Marlins are 30 games under 500. Edward Cabrera is starting on Friday night. He has an 8.26 ERA in the season, has had a year where he had dealt with a shoulder injury, if I'm not mistaken. He's made 2 starts since coming back. They have not been good. He is a guy that has great stuff. 42 strikeouts and 28 in the third, and we have seen him carve at the Mets on some occasions in the past. So I wouldn't say it's a completely easy matchup. Honestly, based on stuff alone, I might say it's the toughest pitcher they're going to face, and he has an ERA over 8, but you got to handle business. Game 2 will be Rodri Munoz against Jose Quintana. Munoz has a 5.47 ERA in the season. Trevor Rogers will go on Sunday. He's got a 4.72 ERA, and that's against Sevy, who needs to have a really good start to bounce back here, get himself on track in the second half. Monday, the final game of the series, you have Yanni Chirinos, who's pitching to a 5.76 ERA, will be going up against Christian Scott. What a better place to get your first career Major League win than doing it in front of friends and family in Miami. This would be his second start pitching in that ballpark that I'm sure he went to a ton growing up. So that'll be a fun game for him. And this is an exciting opportunity for the Mets. You get 10 more games against the Marlins and the Nationals this year. Take advantage of them. We'll see how the Mets fare. I will be in the ballpark again Friday night. So if anyone is as well, hit me up on Twitter. The DMs are open, or you can put a comment on one of my tweets. And I'd love to say hello to anyone who's in the ballpark. And we will see if this team can get things right back or pick things up right where they left off. It's going to be a fun ride leading into this deadline. I'll be with you every step of the way. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. You can follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. We got a goal to get to 10,000 subs by the end of the season. So I appreciate all of you who continue to subscribe. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen, your first watch every day. Now for your second watch, head over to YouTube and check out the first ever 24/7 streaming channel that covers everything in the world of sports with our local experts from each team and our league-wide experts from each league. Find Locked On Sports Today streaming 24/7 on YouTube and on Amazon Fire TV.